Hi, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing Art in the Blood by Bonnie Macbird. This is the first novel in the Sherlock Holmes Adventures series. Now, I think this series has been going for a few years. I think this novel was published in around 2015-16 or so. I think there may be 4 or 5 novels in this series. Not 100% sure on that, but I've got a feeling that's what it is. This is the first novel, of course. I've been wanting to read this series for quite some time. I've been spotting it here and there, certain books in the series, and I've just been a bit wary because you just don't know what to expect with someone interpreting Sherlock Holmes and Watson. What are you going to get? Are you going to get something like the TV shows we've got? I got to the point where I thought, give it a go. And so I found book 1 in the library and book 2. So I grabbed them both and thought, let's get started. Let's see what they're like. If I don't like them, that's fine. I can just stop that series then and move on. So let's discuss Art in the Blood, the first book in this series. At the start of this book, Holmes is in quite a bad way. We don't know everything that happened prior to starting this novel, but we do learn that he was in prison for about a week, and the reason was because he tampered or interfered with evidence in the Jack the Ripper case. Don't know what he did. No one tells us in the novel what he actually did to that evidence. We just know that he was thrown in prison for about a week, and his brother, Mowcroft, gets him out. But in that time in prison, he's affected by it, so much so that he hides away in his bedroom. He won't come out, he won't eat, he won't do anything. He's back on the cocaine, and we learn that he told Watson that he would go off the cocaine, but he's back on it, and so he's in a really bad way. Watson comes around to check on him because he's asked to by Holmes's housekeeper. He can't get Holmes to snap out of that funk he's in. The only thing that snaps him out of it is the arrival of a mysterious letter from France. It's written by a woman who wants Holmes's help. The thing that gets Holmes's interest, gets his motor running, is that there's 2 messages in this letter. One's in invisible ink, and it's that message that Holmes is excited about, and he assumes from the letter that the lady's in danger, something about her language or what she writes in there. So they jet off to France, well, not jet off, but they head over to France to find out what's going on to get more info. What we learn is that the woman's son is missing, presumed kidnapped. Even though she's the mother, she doesn't have custody of the boy. Custody is with the father and the father's now wife. The father is a high-profile person in England, Lord Pallingham, and he's one of the most powerful lords in England in the novel. She thinks that he's kidnapped the son or put him away somewhere out of her reach for some reason. She thinks that he's in danger. Holmes agrees, and he takes on the case. I'm not really sure at this stage what's going with Watson. Watson kind of agrees, kind of thinks that maybe more to it than what they're being told, but he goes along with Holmes, like we expect him to. There's also another element, another case in this story involving an art theft. A series of art thefts, actually. Holmes thinks that Lord Pallingham may be involved in that as well, so it's quite coincidental that these 2 cases involve the same area or the same people. So back to England, Holmes and Watson go to investigate both cases, but they're being asked to go and investigate the art case, not so much the missing child case. But it's okay because there's other people who will help out with the missing child case, and we learn more about them as we go along. And one of those people is quite fun. It's quite a very vibrant and fun character. I won't go into any more detail on the plot because that will give too much away. I'll only say that while they're investigating the 2 cases, a 3rd case does pop up out of the blue, and that's also a very interesting case, and Holmes investigates that and also solves that one as we'd expect him to at the end of these novels, because it wouldn't be a Sherlock Holmes novel if he didn't solve the cases. There are quite a few fun elements in this plot, and quite a few things that Holmes does that is quite interesting. He dresses up in disguise a few times and pretends to be other people. That's quite fun to see. I don't like the way in the plot that Holmes often makes mistakes. It seems a bit odd for a Sherlock Holmes story, and some of the mistakes are quite easy mistakes to make, And I found that a bit odd that the author included that in the plot. So of course the first character we have to discuss is Sherlock Holmes. It is about him after all. In this book, I didn't think he was like the Holmes of old. The author has tried to create a Holmes character, I think, based on different Holmes in modern films and TV series, a kind of Frankenstein Holmes. And I don't think it worked 100%. There are certain things that I don't think match what the Holmes character is, especially those mistakes in the novel. I don't know that Holmes would make such easy mistakes in the old stories, but this is a new take, so give the author some leeway, but still not the best Holmes for me. Not the same Watson as we get in the stories, but I did find this Watson a bit better in some ways. I did like the way he had a lot of strength of character and he was able to argue his point with Holmes a lot. I did enjoy that, and he seemed to have just a bit more of a spine. He was not the standout character for me, but one of the better characters in the novel. A lot to like about Watson. The next character is Mademoiselle La Victoire. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Let's move on anyway. This character was created to be very flamboyant, very loud, very over the top. I really didn't like this character that much. It seemed like because she was an artist, she's a singer, that she had to have tantrums and huge ups and downs in emotion stability. I just didn't think there was a good character in that way, and it made me just kind of tune out a bit when this character was around in the story. I could give or take this character, so I didn't really engage with the character. I didn't really care what happened to this character, which is a shame because she's the driver for one of the main plots, one of the main mysteries that Sherlock has to solve in this novel. But just the fact that it felt like the author wanted to create an over-the-top character just because someone's an artist just wasn't the best choice for me. The last character I want to talk about is Vidor. And he's another French character, and he's very fun, very exciting, very colourful. My favourite character of this novel. Whenever he was on the page, you just knew you were going to have a good time. And there are some very, very funny moments with him. He's also self-deprecating as a character in the novel, which I found quite unique and quite strange. You don't really get that in characters in novels, but that was quite unique and quite well done. I really liked this character and thought the author did a great job. Even though I wasn't sure what to expect with this interpretation of Sherlock and Watson, I secretly had high hopes. You just want it to be good. It wasn't as good as I thought it would be, but it's good enough to make me want to read more in the series. I rate this a 3 out of 5. Some of the key reasons why I rate it a 3 out of 5 is the historic detail wasn't really solid. We had some really just high level, really weak detail. It wasn't very strong and didn't really transport me into that period in England. Some of the characters seemed a bit off as well. Just the fact that we have artists in the novel, we have a couple of them, and they're all flamboyant and strange and eccentric. That just seemed a bit lazy, a bit overdone. Holmes, he's a good enough Holmes, but not the Holmes that I expected. So that was a bit disappointing as well. But I still want to read the next in the series, and let's see what I think of Holmes then. Maybe I'll change my mind. Who knows? So a 3 out of 5 for this one. If you want to see my reviews on the rest of this series when I read them, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out.